Hello everyone, I'm Saeed, the codogrammer, and in this video we're going to look at strings in Kotlin. Now here I am in my trusty Kotlin project in IntelliJ, which you can see here. I'm just going to minimize that. Alright, so strings are basically a sequence of characters. You can think of it as a jumble of letters, numbers, spaces, and characters, etc. To declare a string, you just say val s equals abc, so the variable name is s, and the string value is abc inside double quotes. Okay, so that's how you declare a string in Kotlin. Now, strings in Kotlin are immutable. If you come from Java, you're already familiar with that. What it basically means is that if you do any kind of transformation function on a string, it will create a new string. The original string will stay where it is and it will create a new one. So we've got an example here where we declare a string called f with the value abc. We say that we want to uppercase it and assign the result of that uppercasing to g. So to prove that f doesn't change and g is the new uppercased string, we're going to print these two things out. So let's just run this. Okay, and I'm just going to scroll to the top because we've got multiple print statements, and these two print statements here are ABC and ABC uppercase. So I'll just clear that output and bring that down a bit. So what that means is that after calling f.uppercase, it didn't actually change the value of f. That string stayed where it was. This returned a new string which got assigned to g. So when we print f, it still says ABC in lowercase, and when we print g, it says ABC in uppercase, okay? So strings are immutable. If you make any change to a string, the original string stays where it is. And there's all sorts of optimizations that Kotlin can do on that basis behind the scenes, but we won't get into that in this video. Now let's take a look at concatenation. Concatenation basically means joining strings together. You've got two pieces of text and you want to put them together and print them out as if they were one. So here we've got an example where we just say ABC plus DEF, okay? And that combines it. What if we want to combine a number with a string? Well, we can do that again with plus. You know, if that was, for example, 2, that's not going to result in 3. That's still going to result in 2 and then printing 1. Okay, so this will be ABC1. We can also have an empty string plus 1, which will just print out 1. All right, here we have an example where we've got a number first and the text comes afterwards. So let's see what happens when we uncomment that. And you can see that it errors, and let's get rid of that and let's just see what the error message is. So all kinds of error messages saying that you want to use one of the plus functions because it says on the number, you have to actually call a function or do some sort of mathematical operation. You can't just append a string to it. So let's comment that out again. All right, so let's have a look at string templates and raw strings. We're saying that these are preferable to just concatenation that we were doing earlier. So what exactly are they? Well, we'll take a look now. So raw strings are strings that can contain other characters like new lines and tabs without requiring any escaping. I'll show you what escaping means shortly. But if you have a string with multiple lines and special characters and tabs and all that kind of stuff, spaces going on, you can denote that by putting 3 double speech double quotes, double speech marks, and also 3 double quotes, double speech marks at the end. Okay, and we trim the margin, so we trim anything left over at the end, and we trim that on both sides. That's optional, by the way. You don't necessarily need to include that function, but that maintains all the new lines and carriage returns, etc. that you've got in that string. Now, alternatively, you can use escape strings. These basically do the same thing, but instead of putting a new line here, which we've got an actual literal new line, we actually have to encode the new line with this \n, which is an escaped new line. Okay, we just call that escape. So this is an escape string and this is a raw string, and these two are equivalent. Okay, we're not doing any trimming here, but there's nothing at the end anyway apart from this tab. So these are pretty much effectively equivalent. We've got a tab at the end here, but other than that, they're effectively equivalent. All right. Now, me personally, I prefer the format. I prefer this kind of format. I just find it much easier to read in the code than something like this, but it's entirely up to you which you use. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is string templates. So here I've got two variables, name, John, and surname, Smith. Let's change that to uppercase S to be consistent. Now we can say surname.uppercase. That will have no impact whatsoever because we're not assigning that to anything. And remember, strings are immutable. So let's just delete that. I'm not even sure why that's there. So let's get rid of that. Now this is a string template, which means that we've embedded some string variables in there. So we say hello $name, and $name actually points to this variable here. So it will say hello John, and then it will print the surname, but uppercase. And in order to call this expression here, we have to enclose it in $curly braces. So if we're just referring to a variable, we just say dollar and then the variable name. But if we're doing an expression, some sort of operation or calling a function in this case, we enclose it in $curly brace. So we're not actually printing this. Oh, we are printing it out. So let's just run that again to see what it does. Let's bring this up. Okay, you can see that it says hello John. So it substitutes the John value for the $name and it's put in Smith in uppercase, which is exactly what we were trying to achieve here. Okay, so just to recap, templates, you can embed variables using $, and you can also embed expressions using $curly braces. And one important thing to note about these kind of templates is that they can be used in escape strings. In other words, you could include variables in there with the $. They can also be used in raw strings if you just, again, use that $, syntax. So this $name substitution is not exclusive to any particular type of string. Okay, so the next thing is that we've got some examples of useful functions here. So you can uppercase this string by just calling this function here, and that will return the uppercase value. So that's what we'll print. So I'll show you an example of that in a second. You can do padding at the end. So you can say we want a total length of 20 characters and then pad it with a particular letter. So if it's not 20 characters, the remaining characters to make it up to 20 characters, you can pad it with the letter C. That can be quite useful at times. We can also remove the suffix by just specifying just remove the PNG. So we don't have to do any kind of substringing or manually work it out. We can just tell it to remove this particular suffix from the end. We can replace the ABC with DEF or any other value within the string. We can also say drop the last 4 characters, which is equivalent to remove suffix in this case. All right, so let me just show you the previous run of that and what that looked like. So you can see the uppercase there. We've got uppercase, then we've padded the string with the letter C. We've got a remove suffix, so we remove the .png. We've got replace, so ABC becomes DEF. And the final one, drop last, again, we lose the suffix because you drop the last 4 characters. And there's many, many more functions that you can familiarize yourself with if you're using strings. All right, so next thing is building strings with buildString. So buildString is a very useful function if you want to build a string from a bunch of other strings and use some kind of functions which are quite efficient and possibly make it more readable. So here we've got an example of a buildString function with an append function of this string here, and we want to repeat that 3 times. Then we append a bunch more things here. Then we append new lines here with these values. Okay, so let's just again see what that looks like. So you can see the result here is ABC, ABC, etc. It gets all this stuff repeated here. And then we've got these letters here. And again, we're not appending new lines. So you can see that it doesn't do any kind of line breaks in between these strings here. And then when we get to the last 2, after the JKL, it does append a new line. And then I think it's put another new line after that as well. So you can see that if you're doing things like repetition, appending, and also you want to append new lines, etc., there's loads of different ways of composing these kinds of things in buildString. So there's loads of ways of appending these kind of things into a buildString. So it might be worth considering if you've got a long, complex string to construct. All right, the next thing is that we can split a string by line by simply calling the .lines function. Okay, so that's another particularly useful function. And if you want to see other string functions, you can just visit this website here, which is the equivalent of Java docs in Java. They're called kdocs, and I'll show you an example here. All right, so you can have a look here and you can see that there's a whole bunch of information and functions and their definitions. And yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. All right, so that concludes our discussion on Kotlin strings. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments below. I do hope that was useful, but feel free to leave any constructive criticism in the comments below. I definitely find it useful. And don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.